Hey everybody, welcome to What's Going On.
Hi everybody, welcome to the podcast. How you doing? Thank you for the people that have given me feedback and actually reviewed the podcast on iTunes, my website. Dude, this podcast is crazy. Like it's getting so good. Like I appreciate you guys for taking the time. Anyway, so if you're in New York City, remember I got It Matters Comedy this week, Friday, September 27th, 7 p.m. The lineup is awesome. We got Aaron Berg, Nico White. The surprise guest from the club is going to be Mike Britt. He's unbreakable. He is awesome. We got Alex Cahard. Joe Russell is going to be hosting that one. So it's going to be an awesome show. Alex Carabano is going to be doing it. Alex is a guy that I've been working with for the Colombian show, the one that we went to Miami. Alex Carabano he's awesome. He's one of my favorite comics. He just won HBO, the HBO Latino. So he's going to be taping his comedy special in November. So shout out to Alex. I love him. He's going to be doing the podcast, I believe, in the next couple of weeks. I don't know. He's very busy. But anyway, so shout out to Alex. He will be on the show this Friday. So if you like Alex, make sure you support stand-up comedy. It's going to be here at New York Comedy Club. Shout out to New York Comedy Club. You guys are awesome. Thank you for supporting my podcast and my show. I love you guys. The show is the Gramercy, is 24th Street between 2nd and 3rd. Use promo code It Matters for $5 tickets. And Montreal, I'm coming to you on the weekend after, on October 4th and 5th, with my brother Justin Herman. He's going to be headlining Peroni's, so make sure you check it out. Tickets for that are on my website. All right, enough of me promoting shows. Today in studio, I'm so psyched. We got a very, very funny guy from Canada. We met online. We got friends of friends. We know friends. We got friends in common. He's super funny. I actually listened to his album on iTunes. Don't Judge Me, I believe is the title. Super funny dude. He's been on Just for Laughs, and he's been, he's a writer. He's awesome, guys. So give it up for my man Ryan Long.
Hey, man. Yeah, when I listened to some of your interviews, I could already tell that you're going to be like a nice human.
It's always good to have a sample, right? Of being like, hey, listen, this is my work, and I want people that come to the podcast to feel safe. This is not one of those, I'm not trying to podcasts are becoming weird because it's like whatever you say.
And there's different types of
podcasts. That's right.
Sometimes you go and you think that, it's everyone's joking around, and the podcast host like, no, I wanted to talk about some real shit.
No, this is about social awareness, and you're an asshole for doing that.
Yeah, and you know what? Even more so, I always think that no one gives a shit about you. So I'm just like, I kind of have this out of the gate. I'm like, when people ask you questions, I'm like, no one cares. You know what I mean? So, but then sometimes that is what the podcast is. And it seems like you do a little more of that, talking about comedy and talking about people. But my general demeanor, had I not, is someone being like, oh, so where do you grow up? And just like, they deflected. Cause like, no one cares, dude. I'm like, they don't give a shit about your story or whatever.
It is funny. You think that way, right? Like
I do, yeah. I always do, yeah.
Comedians in general, we tend to be more like, whatever.
You don't care. Yeah, you're like, you don't care.
And your take, like our takes are coming from a place of funny. Like we're never, like comedians, when you talk to a comic, my perspective has been that they just give you the funny. They articulate the funny, meaning like they don't really think of the consequences of what they're about to say, whether it's about them or someone else or something else.
Yeah.
And I think that people forget that comedians don't have the same amount of boundaries that a regular dude with a day job that is very cautious.
And that sort of mind is like naturally deconstructionist, right? So you're kind of, let's say it was like, where you're from. Oh, I'm from whatever, this place. The thing about that place, so you're already like, in your mind, you're like already trying to break down something about that as opposed to just saying things. So it's like you're kind of always trying to break down something, or else it feels like it's useless in your mind.
You're like, well, what is this?
What are we talking about? What are we getting to the bottom of?
You're right.
It feels like if you're not like kind of getting to the bottom of something, you're both just saying things.
You're right.
So I'm always kind of cautious of that, and that's why with the different types of podcasts, it's good to check them out beforehand.
You always want to. I always do that. Whenever someone asks, like, "Hey, you want to do my pod?" I try to check a couple episodes. I just want to know what I'm getting into.
Yeah.
I've had a few ones. Actually, one that I listened to, and I'm like, "Oh, this is going to be." I'm gonna have to be careful with what I say.
Because they're going to be...
Because they're going to ask questions where, like, whatever I say could be misconstrued in any kind of, you know what I mean? Like, because I want to be funny, but if they take that snippet of what I said and blow it up out of proportion, then I'm like, Are you
worried about that? I mean, you don't seem like the type of person that's saying the type of stuff that's going to get you in too much trouble, but...
No, you're right. I try to be honest. I try to just keep it...
You could be on SNL, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm not playing... You know what's funny about that is that I don't want to be...
I've heard your perspectives for sure. Like, I understand, like, kind of where you stand on all those things, definitely. But you're just... doesn't seem like in your natural inclination to be doing a podcast where you yell the N-words for 3 hours.
No, that's not my type. I wouldn't do that. And you're right. And for me, it's just, I'm trying to...
Respect someone's right to do a podcast.
That's dead on what I'm trying to accomplish with the podcast. Because I started this... You know Mike Ward, right?
Yeah.
Mike is the guy from Montreal. Super funny in French, and in English he's known for being offensive. Like people know that he's like this kind of like offensive comic. But he's like literally the nicest dude you'll ever meet.
That's what kind of a lot of times how it works, right?
Yeah, and he was fighting this whole thing about the joke that he made. You know, had to pay $40,000 more than that, and he was fighting that. And he's one of those This is a pioneer in freedom of speech in Canada.
Yeah.
Because Canada is very different from the U.S.
Well, people are living in two completely different worlds right now, right? So, and it's even with that stuff, you know, like I'm naturally contrarian or whatever. Like, I don't know if contrarian is the right word, but like a troublemaker. Like I was always into Tom Green and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
Bill Hicks probably.
Yeah. So it's almost like what is troublemaking art is only in relation to what the status quo art is right now. So right now, you know, saying those offensive things is going against the status quo because that's always shoved down your face not to do that. If that wasn't the case, which has, you know, been like that at certain points of time, that wouldn't really appeal to me. So it's almost like...
True.
You know what I mean? It's like if you tell a child they can't say shit, you just made that really funny, right?
They're going to say it.
Yeah, so it's the energy, right? And I mean, I'm always kind of thinking about where the energy is. Like, you want to have good comedy that's also scratching a cultural itch, right? Like, you want to have that thing where people say, "Oh shit, yeah, that's," and I mean, that's what makes that's so true, right? And it's the same thing with this offensive stuff. It's, you know, the reason why people are fighting back against that, and doing these things is because it's, you know, fighting against what they consider mainstream, you know, in vogue opinion, right?
So true. So what you think? Like,
so it's not about just like shocking people, because a lot of these people that are probably in that genre necessarily wouldn't be if that became like the big thing and you turned on every comedy special and as a guy like, and then I fucked this baby and you know, whatever. Realistically, I'll tell you where those people ended up, and this is right. I wouldn't want to do that anymore.
Yeah, you're right.
If anything, if you went on to a comedy show and they're like, you're not dirty enough, like you didn't even talk about fucking tranny skulls.
No, I know exactly what you mean. Keep going.
I'll just to finish that point. When that is the vibe, a lot of times you end up somewhere else artistically, and I think that's what, like, to me, Tim and Eric was at the time, or, you know, like those people were deconstructionalist when mainstream culture wasn't so political, right? So when mainstream culture changes, what is the rebellious art form to mainstream also?
That's an excellent take. I think that's probably that articulates where a lot of people are coming from. They're not coming from a place of hate. They're coming from a place of let's. That was George Carlin's.
People don't know what people both think their side, the other side's the status quo. Right now, people on the left think they're George Carlin fighting the status quo, and then people on the whatever quote unquote or the other side think that they're fighting the status quo.
It's weird to think that, because it's so extreme. Like, we're so divided.
A lot of times it depends on where you are and what room you are.
Yeah,
you know?
Societally, you're like, if you talk to someone that happened to be very liberal, this is what I try to do when I walk into a room and they're very liberal. I don't want to say anything that can trigger them. Like, I don't want to say, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to say something that they're going to be like, so you're telling me that
there's a liberal room, you motherfucking, not here. Not here.
And I'm like,
listen to my podcast, the N-word.
I just go, I just go with, like, you know what, to be honest, there's different takes and there's different, you know.
But also, don't forget, like, this isn't correcting you, it's just adding something, but if someone is a political activist, right? and they have an agenda, they're not there to like argue or conversate in good faith, right?
Yeah.
So if someone comes to your door and is here to sell you a product, and you start arguing, like let's say someone's here to sell you Windex, and you start talking about different brands of Windex, they're not having that conversation in good faith.
Yeah.
So if someone is there to like push a specific agenda, which those people are, part of a team and they're part of like an army.
Yeah.
They feel like they're at war. So I mean, they're not there in good faith to begin with, right?
They're not willing to take any arguments in the.
Yeah, because they're a soldier at that point, right?
Yeah, and you're going with this biased view of what you think the world should be, and then that's the most dangerous thing that you can get into when you don't want to hear the other side. You're only taking arguments from your friends and the people that you believe are your family, and
definitely,
and then you just don't listen to the other side. And I think that this is where comedy comes in and is a very important art form. Is that I got into stand-up comedy because I wanted to question everything. I wanted first to start with me. I want to question who I am, what I'm doing, and what the whole purpose of being here is. Like that was like, it's a very personal comedy. And then I wanted to question further on societal and things that I'm like, whoa, this doesn't make any sense. Why would you do this? Why would you do that? But now, and that's how Lenny Bruce, got comedy back on the map. Like he was the guy who got arrested for saying things that you shouldn't say on stage.
Yeah.
And then Carling and Bill Hicks and all these guys
There's things happening again right now, right?
Yeah, so
if you think about, what my take was, a lot of people maybe won't agree with this, but to me, that's what happened over the last 4 years, where you saw that like Sam Hyde, $1 Million Extreme get their show canceled, and the Gavin McInnes's of the world. They were doing that, and then Chappelle kind of became the closer to what Lenny Bruce is, where his new special kind of did all the same things.
I loved it, dude. I loved it.
But that's because right now was the time where he was big enough, and those issues were like the juice had worn off them enough that it was okay for him to talk about. Where people that said those same things 2-3 years ago that were not as famous got fired. So he's kind of doing what the cool kids are 3 years later. So it's like he would be like the rebellious mainstream, right?
Yeah.
And he's kind of doing like what really like the people that were on the dark corners of the internet, or the shows that Hollywood was getting canceled because they were saying the wrong things. That stuff is sort of seeped up enough that normal people that just work a normal job were like, yeah, this stuff is a little crazy, right? And then so if you ask just your average normal person now about most of these issues that were kind of jammed down your face, most people were kind of like, yeah, this stuff's a little much, right?
Yeah, and that's where we are.
And so Chappelle was at a safe place to sort of with his status as a comedian and where culture has sort of shifted, that was the perfect time. And I think he has guys like him, that's what they're best at, is just knowing the moment to like strike on a certain thing. Because he didn't go as hard last special, and he probably could have, and he probably had the same thoughts, but he didn't feel like the moment was right.
There was a lot of those themes that he had in the last two that he did back to back. There's a lot of things that he talked about on those hours or whatever he did. And like Louis, like he made jokes about Louis there, and he did them again.
It was still great. Yeah, he was still peppering it in.
Yeah,
for sure.
And he was still working on the concept of how ridiculous it is that you wanna get someone out of a job, and you want to just make sure that they don't they don't exist anymore as a person, because you hate the idea when you really think about it, is ridiculous. Like,
of course,
like, yeah, Louis is a creepy guy for doing what he did, but it doesn't mean that he shouldn't be a comic. Like that's where you have to be consistent with, like, well, he did something that was wrong, and I've gotten in arguments with my wife about this, and I love her because I appreciate where she's coming from. I was arguing
with your wife about this.
But she's got it, and then we're coming. We've talked about this enough that now we have like an agreement on, like, she agrees that he's funny, and that
he started, in my opinion, like modern feminist comedy. I mean, Louis to me is another guy that was always kind of changing the tides, and I would like credit Louis with starting a type of comedy that, in my opinion, like became a monster that went in a bad direction.
Yes. Louis was the first guy who really, really delved into deep personal secrets.
Well, because he was in my opinion, like a reaction to kind of a macho culture, which I felt that at the same time too. Whereas I remember even just shifted in me. It's like I've been the same person for a while, and I remember then when I was like at the time kind of feeling like, these like fucking broy dudes annoying to me. And then it switched so far where people are like, oh, you're a broy dude.
Yeah.
And I'm like, people are like, oh, this masculine guy, Ryan. And I was like, you were calling, like, I was a pussy culturally. Like 7 years ago. It's changed so much that my energy is now this like ultra masculine.
Now you're the guy who's the problem. You have the dick energy. Like you're somehow the problem.
Yeah. And I was kind of, I would say maybe I was in the middle or like a bit of both, right?
Yeah. And so the Louis argument with me was like, to go back to the wife thing, is that I never disagree with what he did in terms of like the people being like, yeah, he's creepy. Like, what the hell was it? I never said that was right. I was never protecting Louis on the grounds that he's a good person. I was saying you can't cancel someone that is one of the best comics you'll ever see.
Right.
And the evidence to back it up is that he's coming back and he's selling out comedy clubs within seconds because people want to see him.
Yes.
So you can't cancel something like that. It's just...
No, you can't really cancel them. But even that, it's like, it's almost giving too much credit to the motives of what's happening, because you're having conversations of like whether it's legitimate and whether it was not legitimate, but like that's not really what happened. It was like an all-out war to take down as many fucking men in power as possible.
Yeah, because there's a whole wave of people.
So and then when you start getting into the thing of like, is he guilty? Is he innocent? Like that's so far above what was actually happening. Yeah. Like what was actually happening was let's take down anyone for anything they ever did.
Morgan Freeman was going to go down. Morgan Freeman.
And there's no judge, there's no trial. It's like, fuck this guy. And then, even though his life's ruined, it turns out he's innocent, like whatever. It's like, so when they start being like, well, he's guilty, and you start to debate, they don't care. So they might get bullied into with you, like having that conversation about like, maybe what he did was, well, I'm just saying, like you're talking about, they don't, but that's like after the fact, because really they don't care. They're just good, another one. The bloodlust.
It feels like
yes.
You're in high school and they just want to get you. It's like how can we be mean to the people that we believe are the problem? And
they're trying to break up a couple and they're looking for any dirt.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, afterwards, it's like having that conversation. You're debating, like they broke up the couple off a fake note, and then you're debating like, well, if you actually look at the note, it is kind of, and you're like, none of it's not about the note. You wanted to break up this couple. You didn't care how you did it. And now that it happened, you're pretending to care about the reason.
That's a perfect analogy right there. That's so relatable to where we are societally. And okay, so let me ask you this: with you coming from Canada to the United States, have you felt a change? Like, is there any difference between doing stand up in Toronto and doing stand up in New York?
There's two parts of it. So it is the same culture, but the only difference is when a place is smaller, it doesn't have a counterculture to that culture. So there are, like, you were talking about Berg, he's on Compound Media. There's a lot of people making a career doing counterculture, right?
Yeah.
So same with, look at music's always the best place. Like there's a lot of big metal bands here making a lot of money, whereas in Canada, our radio and our mainstream, there's only room for like a small little amount, right?
Yeah.
So when there's only room for 10 people, they're all very like mainstream acts, and it kind of flattens out the curve, and there's no room for the underbelly, right?
Yeah.
So in New York, the mainstream's the same. It's, your Comedy Central style, but then the underbelly exists. And so that's something that I find
That's
cool.
very true. Yeah, so, there's a counterpoint here, whereas in Canada, you don't really have that.
So yeah, one of the reasons I did move was like, it was actively working against me, right? So I've had like some television shows, and I have a show on a broadcaster, and I have, like last year I had probably 3 of like the biggest videos in the country, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then 3 or 4. So every time I went to any meetings with anyone, it was like, listen, like we're not going to make a show with a man right now. And then, so the network made a show with all women. Then they made like an ethnic show, and they're like, we're not going to make a show with like white men or whatever.
That's fascinating.
But there isn't another option, right? Which is fine, but it's like, you're allowed to do whatever you want. But unfortunately in Canada, there's only one place and it runs everything, and there's not another option. So they're like, we're going to government subsidize, we're going to run the whole thing. And then we're gonna like have a very aggressive ideology.
You happen to be collateral damage in this whole thing.
Yeah, which I actually, and it's like, I don't care if a place wants to do things however they want to do them, if there's another option.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, there is another option. I moved, right? Like, the option was to leave, and already things are, I'm not feeling that. There's this vibe almost like everyone kind of knows, at least in this climate, that like every production company I met with, they go, listen, like, could you find like a girl and maybe make like a...
Yeah, of course. Yeah. There's more awareness about like...
Yeah, you maybe make her the main voice, and we kind of... And so I started like kind of playing that game a little bit, and I did versions of that. And then, so when I moved here, I guess I haven't felt that like that kind of like walking into a room and people being like, oh, another white man. So I a little bit, so because we don't have a counterculture, it's more aggressive. And I've always been like punk rock and anything. So I like kind of dwelling in the murk a little bit anyway.
Yeah.
So it sounds like I'm saying like, finally, like, I'm respected as a white man, but it's like, whatever, it's just a trend. This is what's happening right now.
Yeah.
It's the same with alt comedy, right? Like, so alt comedy kind of became mainstream comedy here like 10 years ago, right?
Yes.
And then sort of alt comedy sort of transitioned into like woke comedy or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So those people that are all like, they hate Trump now, they used to be into like Tim and Eric and stuff, right? It's true though. It's the same people, right?
It's the same game.
I have a theory as to why. So yeah, I always say like my friend.
Please do explain that.
I always talk about how those people, it's like, oh, he used to be into weird comedy, now he hates Trump. Like that's his two identities, right? Those are the identity shifts of his transition over the last 8 years. But so that, and
you're not accountable for those changes. It is what it is.
Yeah. So, but that happened in Canada too. So that took over, and that's the mainstream thing. But then there's not really another alternative to that. So that's the problem with a small country or even a small town, is when the mainstream ideologies that take over in Hollywood are here. There is another option, whereas in a smaller place there isn't another option, so it's a little more militant.
Well, you perpetuate whatever you think it's
because there isn't enough spots.
True.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
So there isn't enough spots for a secondary thing to be especially financially viable.
Yeah, you're
most
right.
importantly.
This is why you bring up a point that it just clicked in my head. This is why Montreal is such a good place for stand-up, because the counterpoint to the liberal, like the alt comedy, that comedy is French comedy. Because French comedy,
Quebec's different because Quebec's a self-sustaining country. It doesn't. Did you know 9 out of 10 of the biggest grossing comedians in Canada all are French?
Yeah, because
it's its own country. That's every country.
It's
right?
insane because I barely started doing comedy in French when I was there. Like I was there for a couple of months.
Because it's its own ecosystem.
Yeah,
right?
and Mike wanted, like, he was like, why don't you do the open mic and see how it goes? And I started doing it. Dude, within like 2 years, you already have a whole career planned out. Like it's like you're gonna do this.
Well,
show.
that would be like it in any other non-English speaking country too, right?
It's insane, but it's like it's Quebec. Quebec is within Canada. It's like one of those little industries that you're like, oh yeah, and the comedy is not. That's why French comics are way more outrageous than Anglo comics.
Yeah, because they're not competing with what's in vogue at Comedy Central right now, right?
Yeah. So they're
they have their own culture. And a lot of times French people, especially in Quebec, are very stubbornly anti-establishment.
Yes,
because
they are, yeah.
So whatever like Anglo mainstream kind of culture is, they are already go against that. Because they're protecting their French identity by nature, and then on top of that, so it's like a combination of both those things happening at the same time,
which makes French comedy in Quebec so rich and so good. And this is something that's evident.
I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah, you're right. Oh, what am I talking about? But this is evidence.
Oh, la la.
This is evidence of
Just
something cool about
gags.
French comedy is that someone like Sugar Sammy.
Yeah.
He was doing comedy in English. He was successful doing comedy in English. Then he did comedy in French. Within a couple of years, he was already selling at theaters. He was crushing it, selling at like 32 shows back to back. And even though Quebecers are racist in nature, just because of the way they are, they welcome Sammy because he was funny. He could.
Right.
They couldn't
I don't know if they're necessarily. I mean, I spent a lot of time in Quebec, and I wouldn't necessarily just say that all Quebecers are racist.
It's not true. Well, obviously, what I said.
The thing is, Quebec people are all. It's the same as any culture.
Every Quebec is racist.
They're the same as Indians or Chinese people or anything else. Like go to China, go to any like ethno state essentially, where people take their culture seriously. And they feel like they've been under attack. So, like,
no, you're right. You're right.
There is this like idea of just everyone likes to people. I'm like pro person. Like people aren't that bad. Even people that are aggressively trying to ruin your life. I'm like empathetic to
if you
why
get to
people
know
are
them,
a certain
at the
way.
end of the day, they're not that bad.
But, go to China and talk to Chinese about Chinese culture, and you're like, hey, what if American culture moves in here and replaces your culture?
They'll say fuck that.
Well, that's what Quebec thinks, right? And you're saying like, Quebec, you've already been fighting for your life to like keep your culture. You've already tried to leave Canada. It didn't really work. You consider yourself being replaced by Canada, and then on top of that, you're like, oh, by the way, you're going to be the highest. We're going to import like some crazy high level of like Muslims into your.
And they're going to go to Quebec,
Yeah, so I get why. Of course, if they're not white, it seems racist to them. And I'm like, listen, I don't give a shit one way or the other, like on those issues. I'm just saying, like, here's the thing: racist to me aren't afraid to tell you they're racist. Like, go talk to the Ku Klux Klan or
Yeah,
an actual
yeah.
racist.
They'll
They're not
straight
like,
out-
well, no, it's not about the race. They're like, yeah, we think the white race is superior. If you go and ask someone, why do you not want mass immigration? It's because we like want to preserve French culture. And you're like, no, you're lying. It's actually because you think white people are better. And they're like, well, if you're French and black, we don't care.
It's not as simple as saying, yeah, you're right, because you can't just outright say.
They're like all hyped up on being French, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, it's
I
whatever.
like your perspective because you are.
I'm like not quick to jump to like the worst motives for people that, especially if like take people's words at face value to some degree, right?
Yeah,
Unless proven otherwise.
And your perspective actually makes sense in terms of if we, because I going back to the statement that it's like Quebecers are racist, that's obviously not true. That would be crazy to think that.
And there's tons of liberal. I mean, those are.
Yeah, it's just like it's one of those habits that you have to say like all Americans are racist.
Yeah.
Clearly not
It's
true.
the same thing. Yeah.
It's
Quebec this only happened to them 2 years ago. Like that, it really turned on. Then the Quebec people are racist.
Yeah. There's been like they've been fighting back for and there's legitimate reason.
Am I wrong about that? Tell me what you think, because I've noticed that in the last 2 years, it's become a stereotype that French people are really racist. Or have you sort of heard that always?
No, it's. I mean, there's always been the case. To be honest, being in Montreal, like that's always been there. Like
Okay,
the Quebecois
debate or whatever.
They don't really like Anglophones and they don't really like minorities. Like that's always been.
What is it called if they don't like English people? Is that racist, or what would that? That's just like.
They just anti-Anglos.
But is there a word for that? Like French people that
against
hate English
racist
people?
against English people?
Yeah, 'cause that's not really a
There's
race,
not
right?
really like an actual thing to describe.
You guys don't have a word for it?
No, there isn't.
You just call it being French.
Being
It's just
French,
like all included.
Yeah, it's just part of the culture. Like you're supposed to hate English people. That's just how it is.
I remember bumper stickers. It's so funny. Bumper sticker that says
But
I
let me tell you,
remember.
but
It means I remember like when we were great because
Yeah.
we didn't have these English people.
Back when we were self-sufficient in French.
Hilarious.
But here's the idea that Quebec is becoming more racist is not untrue. Not that the province is becoming more racist, but there has been more liberal. There has been more political parties that are countering the Liberal Party. So there's been a lot more French Canadians being able to channel their view about being French Canadian in not just a PQ,
In a different way,
but in
yeah.
a different way. So what they've done over the past 2 years is that they've elected a government that's actually fighting to preserve French. And they're saying I forget. Listen. I'm gonna fact check everything at the end of the season, and then you guys, because I've gotten tweets of like
It's kind of like in
that's
the
not
middle,
wrong. But
which
something
sounds
like
good,
this, something
yeah.
along the lines of you need to speak French. You need to make an effort to speak French. I think that if you go to Quebec, even if you're like an Anglo that was born in Canada,
I'm with you, yeah.
and if you go to Quebec and you're there for 3 years and you're from another province, you're supposed to take a test to see how your French is doing.
Yeah, like every other country.
Yeah. So they're trying to regulate French more actively. Like the current party that's
Well, I mean,
took over.
it's that same thing, right? Like with everything. I mean, there's this big, like again. I wish people could just like talk about an issue like this as opposed to like having to state your political.
Yeah, no, you support this.
Yeah,
you
you're on
hate
this side or
people.
this side because
No.
everyone gets so wrapped up in their team, right? But the truth is about that stuff. I mean, people will be like, "Oh, well, you shouldn't have to speak English in America." But you're like, if a country doesn't have a language, then you're not a country. Like if you're not united by a common language, and you could have two areas that have two different languages, like Canada. But if you're an area or a province or a country, which a province could essentially be a small country, and you don't have a common language, then you have nothing.
Yeah.
You're just two divided groups living amongst each other that can't communicate.
Yeah.
So I mean, of course there needs to be that.
Yeah. So and
People are going to get along and I don't know.
their values are not coming from. This is where there's new arguments in favor and against it. So the French thing I'm fine with.
Meet someone that's fucking interrupted.
French, no, it's fine. It's good because this is the kind of conversation that you want to have. People should be talking about these things like we're talking about it. Like there's no like, how dare you? This is the problem with Quebec is that there's nothing wrong with the French, but what's wrong or what people get really worked up about is like banning things like if you're Muslim you can't wear certain things.
Yeah,
like the attire, like
totally.
the way that they dress. Like
Yeah, it was bullshit. Yeah, of
when you get
course.
to that point, it's like yeah, fuck you. Like
But
don't tell
to
me
me
how to
that's
dress.
that's just this. That's the fucking hockey game. Whereas like in New York they're like you can have an abortion when you're 4 years old, and then Texas is like, well then how about no abortions? It's like you know what I mean? They're just fucking volleying the extremism back and forth.
Yeah.
And they're just reactions to each other. So it's like that no Burqa move was a reaction to like fucking Justin Trudeau's. So, you know, it's almost like everyone needs to like appease their base with like blood of the other team, right?
It's so messed up, dude. It's crazy. There's no middle ground.
That's how I see a lot of those extremist moves.
Yeah.
They're a reaction to like, you know, it's like their team goes, hey boss, like they just killed one of our guys. What are we gonna do? It's like,
we gotta go get the man.
Yeah, we're gonna go kill his wife. Yeah,
it's so weird. Like we gotta kill their entire. Like it's like a mob mentality. Exactly what it is. Is like let's kill every single one of them, and then I'll be happy. So let me ask you this, because you're from Toronto, right? Yeah. You know Jordan Peterson.
Of course, yeah.
What do you think of him?
So I mean, I think Jordan Peterson was like. He was such a moment, right? Where I think he represented a lot of people being like, fuck, finally someone said this, right? Yes. He was, you know, because really what he was saying wasn't that crazy. But I mean, even I'm going to transition that question into something else, which is, so the truth is, like, I feel like this conversation of what, you know, the social justice versus free speech and that has sort of become mainstream conversation, and everyone's talking about that right now a little bit, right? Which is good. So what happens next in comedy? Because it's kind of like there was a wave of comedy that's doing this, then there's a wave of sort of the opposite to that, right? And it's like, what happens next? And I think that's where Jordan Peterson's a little bit off, and that, you know, he's really like anti-postmodernism, right? And I'm kind of like the idea that like the cultural context matters is a little bit how I do look at comedy. So I think that idea gets co-opted, but it's kind of like, so what happens next after this? It's like, you know, let's say there's two camps. There's one camp, you know, white people are bad, this and that. And then there's the other camp, like I'm shitting on a corpse because I can say whatever I want and raping babies and whatever, right? Oh, you triggered much? You know, those are the two sides. Yes. So to me, and those things only exist in their like cultural context, right? So I don't think when someone 2 years ago was going on stage and being like, this stuff's a little much, like Bill Burr, and people are like, yeah, fuck yeah, finally someone said it, because I can't say this at work. Yeah. And then, you know, maybe 5 years before that, someone was like, white people got it a little too good, and everyone's like, yeah, fuck, that is true. Yeah. And then it swings too far both ways, right? Yeah. So I think what happens next, to me, which is, I mean, how I've always done my videos and everything, I focus on this as much of like, what happens after. And I think it's got to be a move towards like a more deconstructionalist type of comedy, where it's everyone sort of takes this energy and then what you do with it. So that's what I've been trying to work towards.
Wow, that's very cool. I like that.
So that's what, I mean, I do little jokes like here. I'll tell you like a joke that would be like the start of me kind of talking about this stuff.
The change in, okay, yeah.
And that's what I've been doing for the last year. But I'd say like, you know, I have a girlfriend that's actually transitioning from a girl to a fatter girl. And so it's, I'm kind of talking about.
I'm sure she loves that joke.
Sure, yeah. But it's like, what you're doing is you're kind of, really, it's like you're taking the energy of, I'm talking about transitioning. Everyone's like, where is he going with this? And then you're kind of making fun of the fact that people are so worked up one way or the other.
That's awesome.
So it's almost like people walked into the comedy club with these beliefs, and you make them leave being like, yeah, I was a little fucking too
I like that,
up.
dude. I like that.
So to me, that's what I've been doing for the last little bit. And I've kind of had to put a
Have you had any backlash from doing stuff like that? No, from the liberal, extreme liberal?
To me, well, no, because it's almost like it's post that. To me, this is like back to like deconstruction.
They're offended by everything. That's the problem. Is that anything that
they aren't though. So there's audiences, and I get this every night, because I do controversial stuff. People come up to me every night and they go, "Fuck, how do you get away with that? Like, I can't believe those audiences let you say that. That probably doesn't work a lot of times." And I'm like, "Well, it does every night." The only time it doesn't is like that conversation if the audience is there in bad faith. So if you go to a specific show where they're there for a certain reason and they're like they don't want to laugh. So I know how to. I know that what that energy feels like. And you know, you're in a room where literally you're showing up and your girlfriend's friends hate you, and you're showing up with them and you're like, hey, what's up? And they're like, hi, Ryan, because like you got caught cheating on her 3 times. So it's like they're there in bad faith in that particular interaction.
They're already angry at whatever you're gonna say.
Yeah, so that's the only time that I find that my stuff doesn't. But again, the goal for that isn't to change their opinion. The goal for that is for people that are sitting there worked up. You kind of pull the rug out from under them a little bit, where they after you trick them 3 times, they're kind of like, yeah, you're right. I care. Why do I? You know, both ways. You're like someone that just like has a job and they're like have kids and stuff, and they're like, yeah, why am I fucking posting on Facebook about transgender people? Like, it kind of more just makes them feel like you're just like, yeah, maybe I did get a little too carried away there, right? So I think I think everyone's getting carried away is the vibe that I'm going for right now.
That's amazing.
As opposed to you're wrong, and here's a counter argument of why you're wrong.
Yeah, that's not mainstream, as you said, and that's absolutely one of the most likely, I guess, next steps from this conversation.
If you're into that type of comedy. So not like, again, this is sort of paired with this deconstructionalist making fun of comedy, which is a traditionally like kind of nerd shit, right?
Yeah. And so then
you're sort of making fun of comedy too, right? Which is kind of a nerdy version
yeah,
of
you're
comedy,
doing the
which I
both.
like.
You're making fun of societal stuff and the state of the industry.
And the state of the industry and the actual structure of the joke. Like you're kind of making fun of like, oh, I'm on stage doing jokes. Like, look at my jokes. Like, there's kind of a satirical element to the whole thing.
I like that.
Right?
I
think that's where, a direction that I hope that I like that feels when you ever do comedy when you just feel you're like, oh, I liked where that went. And
you get off and you're like, well, that was actually groundbreaking.
So you start following those things. And for the last year or so, maybe a little less, that's what I've been kind of doing. But again, I'm moving here. I sort of put a pause on my moving forward comedically because I'm kind of just like showcasing and meeting people.
Yeah, you're getting to know the scene and doing all that kind of stuff. So let me put another variable because I like that next step. I really think that you nailed it. I think that that's the way to go.
I hope so.
But how do you overlap that stuff with who? Because this is something that's so interesting in today's comedy and in today's everything is like you are ethnically a white guy.
Yeah.
So when you're doing your material, the next.
Well, here's what I would say on. Oh, sorry.
The next derivative would be like, well, how does that material fit in within your what they call? I mean, I don't care, but I'm just saying what people believe is your identity. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. So I mean, it's outsmarting their own thought process, right? Mm-hmm. So like, here would be like a little thing. Imagine someone said to you like, and a lot of it is owning it, right? So a lot of it is the confidence to say that, like, so that's where all this stuff that's always the combat. But imagine someone says like, that you would think that because you're a white man and be like, I just don't understand like what me being Aryan has to do with this. Or but even like you kind of like purposely misunderstand them too. Look, Norm Macdonald is sort of the king of what I'm saying, and from the last round where this came around, in my opinion. Yeah. And it's that idea of like someone being like, oh, because you're white, and you're like, what are you saying? Like I'm better at coming up with solutions because I'm a white man, like, and you're not as like why just because I'm white, why does that make me? Why am I more able to come up with like a logical answer just because I'm white?
Yeah, you're double. I
mean, you'll get there, but I don't think that's because you're brown or anything. Like,
that's funny.
So I mean, but also leaning into it. Like I always thought it was so funny when people always posted on that you have to, you need to hire ethnic people or whatever. So I would always post
the quota, what they call
which
it.
I did because, I grew up in an area where like all my friends are like multicultural. My family's multicultural. It's just like, I mean, my things are like probably more male driven because that's just who I hang around with and my friends are and stuff like that. And that's like whatever. So, but as far as like multicultural, some people will be like, you need to hire more brown people, and I would always post like, honestly, I'm so pro this, and I'm like, for example, I hired Nitish Sakuja and Amish Patel even though there were far more talented white people because I'm doing my part. So I'm always like,
that is great. That is great.
But obviously anyone knows that. I just don't give a shit about your whole thing.
Yeah,
I'm not part of your war. Like that's what you tell people. Like imagine you and your friends are hanging out and someone's like, can you believe the fucking Red Wings are not going to win? They traded so-and-so. And you're like, oh, he's really hyped up about the Red Wings right now, right? Like he kind of like, you're like, he kind of is like, yeah, you kind of make people embarrassed about what they're trying to shove down your throat because and they should be embarrassed for being at a family gathering yelling at their grandmother because she doesn't have the right, and you should be embarrassed for doing that. It's ridiculous.
It's so crazy to think that there are people, and I've talked about this topic with many comics that don't talk to their relatives because of stuff that sometimes
it's childish for starters.
Yeah, it's just like they're your family. Like, how are you not supposed to talk to your dad or your grandpa because he believes politically things different?
Well, I'll tell you
why.
Not that I'll tell you why. I actually don't have the answer to that per se. But one of the things about that is that they don't understand why people got there. Like when I see a 20-year-old fucking poli-sci student and they're hyped up on like how we need to murder every billionaire, it's like, I do get why they're there. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't think like, fuck you, I can't talk to you. You want to kill me.
This is a fun thing that you said poli-sci because my wife is doing poli-sci. She's older than their class. She's 26, but she's going, she goes to school. So she's You know, she sees like 20-year-olds, like they're watching a movie about some like historical reference, and after the movie ended playing, they're like, "Yeah, Professor, I think we need to unpackage certain scenes of the movie," and they put their entire energy on certain parts of the movie that had nothing to do with the underlying premise.
That's gross.
It was just because they wanted to see. But why did it have to be black? Like stuff like that is just like. But that's not what they're like. Any of the people that are on this, like,
well, they don't want you to make art. They want you to make propaganda, right? Like the fucking Nazi government.
They would hate watching Django. They would lose their mind. Django for them.
Yeah, Christians used to want to make, stuff about Jesus, right?
Yeah. It's so I can't understand that we can't disentangle.
They're at war, right? They're looking at something through a particular lens, you know what I mean?
A very, very, very narrow lens.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, and that's what going through a phase is, right? Like to me, there's a lot of people right now that used to be into emo and now they're this, you know what I mean? Or whatever.
Yeah,
the fuck.
I used to be a dude. I used to love rap.
Whatever it was. Yeah. Whatever phase you're going through. Like at the time, anything your parents said is like, fuck you, mom. You don't even get like, and that's right now. They're the moms and they're still saying fuck you, mom, even though they're 35.
Fuck you, you're still in my basement.
Well, they're saying fuck you, mom. You like Trump. You're racist. Like, there's no difference. They're just saying that they were 16, saying fuck you, mom. You don't get My Chemical Romance. Now they're 35 and they haven't grown up yet, and they're saying fuck you, mom. You don't like the right political team or whatever the fuck, or vice versa. Like the Trump people that right. This is gonna happen in 10 years. You're gonna have all these fucking edgelords that they're liberal parents. It's probably happening now. You don't think there's 16-year-olds that like their mom's coming home and they're like, there's no such thing as gender, and they're like, fuck you, mom. I'm a Trump guy now. You know what I mean? Like
that would be beautiful.
That's what's happening for sure.
Oh man!
Go on. Like if you find the dark corners of the internet, that is 14-year-olds whose 3-year-old parents or whatever their parents in their 30s are telling them that they're not a boy or a girl, and they're like, "How about this, mom? I'm into Trump now. How about that? Your worst nightmare, you fucking bitch." They're a 14-year-old troublemaker.
Dude, that is amazing, man. That is amazing. So okay, so I always try to bring it to this at the end of the podcast, and not always, but it happens in this conversation actually led to this. Social media and the way that we process comedy. Do you think that this is a net positive or net negative for stand-up?
That's a tough one, dude. I don't know, man, because I like I said, we were talking about this before we started, but I won't argue on Twitter. I don't do any of that stuff. Like I really, really make a point of trying to actually focus on the art and be disciplined. And to me, it's just a discipline thing like anything else, right? I go to the gym. I write a certain amount of hours a day. Yeah. I refrain from arguing with people online.
That's the smartest thing you can do.
But I mean, I kind of, like even recently with the Shane Gillis stuff and people getting fired. And it's a tough one to say. It's almost like I don't know what happens next. Maybe that would have to be what happens in the next 5 years might determine whether it's a good thing. It could probably go one of two ways.
Yeah.
But right now, I think it's probably, it's both. I mean, because fucking, it ruined the mainstream, but it made a really good counterculture.
That's exactly, because I'll tell you my view. And then you could probably go from
you might have, because I don't really have a good one right now.
No, because I talk about this frequently with a lot of comics. Okay, so it's very basic. It's that we have, so there's two things going on in comedy. Is the people that have been doing comedy for many decades, like yourself and like many other people that started doing stand-up before Facebook was a thing. Yeah. So you guys had a different core set of values. Like you guys had this like idea that after a couple of years, then you got funny, and then you would, there's certain layers or certain things that you would have to accomplish to become a professional comic.
Yes.
That's not the case anymore, because someone can go to an open mic, post a video, and then there is this like, oh, look at me, I'm doing stand-up. I got like 200 likes, and now I'm a professional comic. And
they can tour to their audience, but they can't really go to a comedy club and like compete with real comics.
So there's two different levels of comedy going on. So there is the people that
they become almost a personality.
Exactly.
That's doing some sort of funny one-man show on their tours or whatever.
Yeah, and but then so the difference that I'm seeing in social media and YouTube and Instagram is that the people who had been doing comedy for 15 years, 20 years, that are utilizing social media in a smart way are growing their fan base exponentially. Andrew Schultz, for example, is someone that has been growing his fan base from day one. Now he doesn't
got
need
a wave, that's for sure.
He doesn't need Netflix. He doesn't need.
Depends on what he wants to do, though. I mean, right? Because I mean, I have this thing. It's like, I'm a filmmaker, right?
Yeah.
So I've been making videos since I was, and I've had some television shows, and I've spent the last 3-4 years making nonstop videos for I have my series and for the hardtimes.net and stuff like that. So I'm like, I do want to make television in the traditional sense. I want to make a Netflix series. I want to make movies.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So it's like, if you want to make Instagram stories and just do stand up for your fans, that is awesome. And you can never replicate what happened to Schultz. His co-star became the most famous person in the world, and then he used that and had his moment and was like great at the
took
time
advantage of that
and
then,
killed it. So he's a super strong comment. So it's like you never can explain that.
No, it's like
again.
that's when you overlap chance with talent.
But if I was him, I would want I still do want to make my I want to make South Park. I want to make.
I see what you're saying.
My Key and Peele. Like I do want to be. So I mean, I to some degree do still want to be part of the legacy channels.
But the question is that those legacy
maybe
channels.
Maybe I need to get rid of that in my brain and be like,
the
I'm
legacy
not that.
how many views or what's the actual engagement with the legacy channels anymore? You know what I mean? Like, is there a difference between getting on
just
Comedy
the
Central?
Funding, just for starters. I mean, I want to.
Yeah, you're right. It just seems to me like if you're
if you want to compare what's the funding behind whatever new big Netflix show compared to Andrew Schultz's YouTube videos.
It's
I mean, if he
different.
wants to drop like $50 million on a series, right?
It's a very different level of budget.
It's a different thing. And I guess someone like him probably would argue that like, oh, you don't need to do that stuff. And I'm like, sure, but I don't think he's ever made a movie, and I don't think he respects that art form the way that he respects stand up. And I think a lot of times people just don't understand that these are different art forms.
If someone approached, I probably believe that if someone came after him and said, "You want to be part of this movie," he wouldn't say no.
No, he probably wouldn't. Yeah, but I mean, he doesn't care like that. He probably doesn't give a shit about being the showrunner on a sitcom or something like that. That he doesn't give a fuck probably.
But so like let's
just stand up.
Mark Norman too. Like he's also someone that's constantly putting videos, like short snippets of his stand up on Instagram and Twitter, and he gets just so many people engaging and like, hey, so these are so
I do it. I don't like that. I like to really spend time and make masterpieces. So I actually don't like I do it, but I don't like that I have to.
You're because you're coming from a place that you're an actual film, like you're a professional filmmaker.
Yeah.
Like you're
well, even stand up. I mean, I like making the specials. I like I mean, I like that.
I see what you mean.
And it's which you still get to do if you're Bill Burr. But to get there, it's this idea of you just need to put out 1 million jokes that are topical all the time. And I mean, I don't think that's better, and I don't like it better. I would prefer that.
Yeah, because it actually then brings me back. I never thought of this, and is that if you leak material week after week, then whenever you actually get to do your taping, you already.
I don't know what's happening, dude. I'm like, this is such an uncharted territory.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I do think, that I think specials should start being half an hour. So it's like...
Yeah, people don't... The last special that I watched back-to-back was Dave Chappelle's.
Right. Maybe the biggest two in the world.
And like Joe Rogan's, the last Joe Rogan one I watched back.
I'll tell you what, Joe Rogan I could have done with a half an hour special, and I probably would have enjoyed it more and liked it better.
Not bad. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that.
And even like, when you watch the Degenerates and they did like Jay Oakerson special, it was like 22 minutes.
Yes.
It just felt like the right amount. I mean, unless this is your favorite person in the history of the world, even still, like half an hour. So I think that... in the last 4 years, I've noticed the way that I cut videos, and things change on the internet so quickly to the point where I remember networks take a very long time, right? So I did a series of 8 videos, and they took 2 months to get me notes. So, and then after I took a couple months to edit it. So by the time that I got the notes, it had been like 4 or 5 months since we shot.
Yeah.
And by the time I shot, I feel like by the time I got their notes and recut, I really felt like I needed to recut everything quicker.
Really?
Because the taste on the internet in that like 3 or 4 month span, I'm always going on instincts, but I'm like, I was right to do like, I think that I was right, but taste changed that quick, right? Where
That's
it's
insane.
Like, it is insane. And the pacing of jokes, like the pacing of the internet and the pacing of, a lot of it is because things that are novel change. So one of the things that was really novel, like 3 years ago, was like, let's say you did a video about your favorite thing. Say you were into magic cards or whatever, right? Something nerdy. And someone did a big, like, viral, funny video about magic card, inner magic card stuff. The fact that they did that was so cool.
Yeah.
Your favorite thing, like, you know, or I'm a chef and there's like a comedy sketch about being a chef. It's so specific that you get more juice and people are more relaxed. Whereas now there's been lots of that, and making fun of these formats, like kind of making fun of branded content, right? There was a moment where doing that was so cool that things could pace slower. And then as soon as those tropes become known, you have to, you don't get any extra gravity from those, so you have to pace it quicker, right? Or you have to premise things differently, right?
It's
kind of the way a lot of things. So, and I feel like my instincts are that every special I've watched felt too long. That's just how I feel.
I agree with you. No, I don't
And
think.
so people are supposed to put them out quicker. Why don't they put out half-hour specials?
Which is funny enough. The same argument that Andrew has given. We're gonna let's. But
I listen to him. He's a smart dude, man. He makes a lot of really smart
the same argument
arguments.
he's given is that he said that his argument for doing the whole. He recorded his special and then he gave it away in the course of like 8 weeks. I don't know. He was just releasing like 7 minutes every single week, which seemed to be more.
I guess I'm just differentiating between he's talking about methods to grow his fan base, and I'm talking about what's the best way for people to consume, to make a masterpiece, and what's the best way for people to consume it.
Absolutely agree.
And I think that's why, like, even when I was sort of disagreeing with someone he was saying before, I was just like arguing something else.
No, you're pro, like, actually when you want. He's
arguing what's the best way to grow your fan base and start a machine that you own that you can't have taken away. Exactly. And he's probably pretty on point with that.
He's on point with that. And then what you're saying is that
but you still need,
but if you still want to be on HBO, that's the point.
He's talked about that. He was he's also, even the way he's sort of someone like that or that new school might talk about, like, you know, TV's dead, and I'm like, it's not though. And I mean, I really, you know, watch Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It's like,
great
that
show.
Is far better than what people are doing on YouTube. It's just and it's also a different thing. So you can't say, like, it's that idea of like, well, there's not going to be any movies anymore because it's all about podcasts, and you're like, one's not replacing the other. These are two different mediums.
They're two different mediums that can coexist.
It's like music isn't getting replaced by comedy. They're different things.
Yeah.
So I think that's just. They're different things.
Dude, Ryan, you're a phenomenal guy. You're super smart, man. You're very smart. I could talk to you for another hour, man. Honestly, dude, I'm so happy. So you're going to be doing It Matters, right, in October?
Yeah, hell yeah, dude. I appreciate you having me on the show. That's amazing.
So I will confirm that it's either going to be October 25th or October 18th. I will definitely confirm that because Amy will let me know. Shout out to Amy. She also has a pretty awesome podcast I listened to recently. You guys should watch it. They also do it at New York Comedy Club. I think it's called Is Not a Green Room, and they've had phenomenal comics too. They do it at New York Comedy Club, so check it out. Anyways, dude, thank you for coming by.
Yeah,
thank you for doing the podcast, dude. So freaking smart. And dude, you know.
Here, let me plug something here.
Yeah, please. If
Just
you have social media and all that stuff, yeah.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt like that, but
no. Yeah, I was gonna say that.
Just because I've done a bunch of podcasts and I keep forgetting.
No. I would never let you forget.
The people I do the podcast with, they're like, fucking say our podcast. I do a podcast called Fucking-omics. So
check
that out. And then I also have a special on the internet and 2 on Spotify if you want to check them out. And my videos, Torontopia, which that's a CBC series you can find on YouTube. And I do all the videos at thehardtimes.net, which is the fastest growing satire site in the world. So check
That's awesome. I'll check it. I should have done my research. And what's your Twitter or your website?
Everything. You know, tell me. Okay, I know we're supposed to wrap up, but that was your opinion on this one thing. Yeah. I read 2 different people that I respect, and I can't remember if it was like a Tim Ferriss type guy. They said choose one social media and mainly do that. So I mainly only do Instagram. And I put everything up there. I know Ryan Long Comedy.
Ryan Long Comedy. And you have a phenomenal Instagram too. I think that's actually smarter than putting your energy on Twitter, which is what I'm doing.
Seems
Twitter,
like a kind of a full-time job being on Twitter too.
Yeah, it is. I used to be really, my game on Twitter was on point. Like I had like a couple years where I was like, oh yeah, this is awesome. But then the whole Trump thing happened and I was like, I don't want to be part of this.
Yeah, so you don't want to be arguing.
Yeah, I left Twitter alone and then I started to grow Instagram. But then now I'm doing both. But what you said has been actually brought up to me, to my attention by several people. Is like, why you keep doing Twitter? Why don't you just do Instagram and grow Instagram?
I was talking to my buddy Danny Polishuk, who I do the podcast with, and he was saying that's where the national conversation happens.
On Twitter. Oh, on Instagram.
And on Twitter. But I'm
Yeah,
like,
that's
maybe
why I haven't
don't-
left. That's why I haven't left. I'm still there. I still see. I love Gary Goldman's tips that he gives every day or every
It's a
week.
tough one, man.
It's
like, see, this, it's like, it's almost like you just need to make your choices and just be disciplined about making your things.
I'm
'Cause
all
you
about
could just be-
balance, so I never left Twitter.
Fuck, dude, you could spend 8 hours a day cutting clips and,
Yeah.
you know, tweeting and doing this and that. And it's like, I don't know, is that the move or is it like
Yeah, no, dude. I don't know.
more complicated landscape? That's
Yeah,
for sure.
that's the best answer. Sometimes you don't know. You don't have to know, guys.
Yeah, you don't need to know.
All right, guys. So make sure you follow Ryan. He's absolutely hilarious, and he will be on It Matters in October. I'll give you guys a date. You guys have been absolutely amazing. This has been What's Going On. Thanks, Ryan, again. You're the man, bro.
Oh, yeah, dude.
Appreciate you.
All right, peace.